So my mom told me when I was about 10 years old is when I remember seeing Backdraft, and I was like, man, I'm going to be a fireman. And she told me, sweetie, your mind will change so many times before you turn 18. When I was 18 years old, I walked across the stage and I graduated Fire Academy. So I got to 19s in July 7, 2010, and it was just, I don't remember the exact day, but it was a couple of shifts after that we had just got there in the morning, and I was on the ambulance that day, and we had responded just south of 30, around the corner from Fair Park, and a guy's head was basically, he was found dead in the backyard with his head squished like with a rock. And then I thought, man, this is the real deal here. And so then I ended up pulling the ambulance. I just pulled up a little bit past him, so the back of the ambulance was even with him. Will gets out and tends to the patient about the time, and then I get out with the radio and the computer, and as I'm making my way around the back of the ambulance, Will comes running around the back of the ambulance and says, hey man, we got to get out of here. There's a guy with an AR. And he kind of points like through the ambulance. We're standing behind an ambulance. There's a guy walking towards us with the gun, with a long black rifle is what I know at the time, but we learned later it was an AR. On his shoulder, he's looking down the barrel of it, very calmly, very methodically walking down the sidewalk. He never ran. He never, changed his pace that I could see. And then we still have a patient that was laying there on the ground next to us.
You're listening to the ATO Bridging the Divide podcast, brought to you by the Assist the Officer Foundation.
Since 1999, the ATO has given assistance to the first responder community, and now we want to give them a platform to hear their incredible stories.
We also want to hear the stories of the many people that support us.
Our community is small, but it is strong.
We have differences. We don't always agree, and we all make mistakes.
But together we can grow, we can heal.
And we can learn from those mistakes.
And together we can bridge the divide.
Fireman's Prayer. When I am called to duty, God, whatever flames may rage, give me the strength to save some life, whatever be its age. Help me to embrace a little child before it's too late, or some older person from the horror of that fate. Enable me to be alert and hear the weakest shout, and quickly and efficiently put the fire out. I want to fill my calling and give the best in me to guard my neighbor and protect his property. And if according to your will, I have to lose my life, please bless with your protecting hand my children and my wife. A.W. Smokey Lynn. Smokey Lynn wrote a fireman's prayer after he'd been at a call involving children trapped in a burning apartment building. The firefighters could see the children in the windows but could not rescue them due to the iron bars the apartment owner had installed. Today's guest is a good friend of the show and a good friend of the ATO. He grew up in Oregon but got to Texas as fast as he could. This guest married his high school sweetheart. They are parents to the beautiful twins, Callahan Whalen and Corbin Lee. To attempt to change culture, break stigmas, and uproot long ingrained environments in the first responder world, it's an uphill battle. It's a constant fight. This show knows that all too well. This guest chose to take on this fight. He chose to help plant trees that he may never benefit from the shade. His mission is to help generations of first responders that drive into Dallas, Texas to serve. Please welcome Dallas Fire and Rescue, Casey Ellsworth, to the stage. Casey Ellsworth, welcome to the stage.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Are you aware of us? Have you heard of this?
I'm pretty familiar with ATO,
okay.
yeah.
Okay. I also want to welcome on Sergeant Omar Figueroa.
Thanks for having me, Joe.
Yep, he's been on the mic before in our Owl episode. He had quite the 7-7 tail. And always here's Sergeant Kent Wolverton. We also have very special guests in the room. We can't coax them into coming on the mic yet, but we have AJ Claggett. Yeah, I did say Claggett. It's a daughter of Dottie and Steve Claggett. She's sitting in today. Her mom is here, Dottie. She's back in the room, and as well as Judy Kurtz. They're sitting in to be the peanut gallery for this episode. I'm going to try to talk them into getting on the mic later on, but we'll see. And actually, they're the only, now I think we've had all the Claggetts in the recording room except for Dr. Matt Claggett. We need to get him in here. Casey, you ready to get into this? We got quite a bit to talk about. It's been a minute since we've had a firefighter on. And I've had some people at the Legends Fit there in Rockwall complaining that we haven't had any more firefighters. And I've had your bio for a good while, and it's, you kind of him-hawed around for the longest time on getting this scheduled, and, I'm glad we're getting it done. All right, Casey, let's talk about life growing up.
So I moved to Texas whenever I was 7. I lived with my stepdad, my mom, and my half-brother because I don't know who my real dad is. He ended up leaving my mom apparently when she was pregnant because he was physically abusive. My mom, she worked as a restaurant manager, fast food, and primarily fast food. My stepdad, the reason that we moved to Texas was he worked for they built roofing trusses. A company that built those, and they relocated us here, and then sent, pretty quick after we moved here, he ended up getting laid off. Money was always tight. We bought cars, from Tote the Notes, different areas. One particular place in mine's off Berry Avenue in Fort Worth. We would that would be our weekend trip to Fort Worth to go make the car payment. And basically we'd keep those cars until they either caught on fire, they got repoed, or they'd break down, and we'd have to buy a new one. Really, in all honesty, the only thing that was consistent was inconsistency, right? I did not learn until I got older that basically a lot of our groceries came from the food pantry across the street, and as well as our Christmas presents and stuff.
You put in your bio that you lived in a motel in Euless from 8 years old until graduation. And you just kind of left it at that, and I knew there was a story, a much deeper story behind that. Kind of sharpen your gratitude at an early age.
Yeah, so when we first moved to Texas, we moved to Arlington, then we also lived in Bedford, and then ultimately Euless. And again, as I got older, I realized that we would live in an apartment until basically we were evicted, because my parents would stop paying the bills because, he got laid off. And the last place that we had landed was the Mid-Cities Inn that's in Euless. To kind of paint that picture, is a regular double queen motel room, but it had cinder block walls. Both my parents, they chain smoked, where you could literally draw your name in the soot, on those walls. My mom would cook every now and then with an electric skillet, and then eventually we ended up getting a toaster oven. We ate a lot of Hamburger Helper. And then about the puberty age, I don't remember specifically, we ended up getting bunk beds, and that was my privacy. I was able to get my own bed about probably 12 or 13, so I didn't have to sleep with my little brother anymore. But yeah, like you mentioned, the motel did teach me a lot. I was exposed to real life at a pretty young age. We'll just leave it at biology, with the different people that were moving in and out of the hotel, drugs, alcohol. Violence was a way of life. Basically, if you weren't screaming, you weren't getting your point across, is kind of the points that I took. At one point, drug trafficking was so bad that police blocked off the entrance to where there was only one way in, one way out, so the police could control the entrance. kind of a fun fact, the Mid-Cities Inn actually just got shut down because in 2021 there was a big investigation there because a guy had killed 3 people and dismembered their bodies and actually put them in the dumpster there, which that was the same dumpster that I used to dive in. And, you know, Saturday morning was like Christmas because I would go collect all the beer cans and take them down the street to recycle them so I could have lunch money for the next week.
And that was there in Euless.
Yep, right down the street from the police station.
And it literally just got shut down.
Yeah, the incident happened in 2021, but it just now...
It took that long. We have, you know, a lot of people don't realize that where Euless is at, it's kind of in between DFW Airport and Dallas on the, was it the north, kind of the western side of the Metroplex. And a lot of people may not be aware that there are places in Euless, in the Irving area, that are that bad. Because that what you're describing sounds a lot like South Dallas and parts of the Pleasant Grove area.
Exactly. Yeah. You know, Euless is about 2 square miles. If you've ever flown into DFW Airport, you've probably flown right over it. If you've driven to Fort Worth, you probably drove right through it, didn't even know it. They have, you know, it's a pretty small town. They got 3 fire stations and about 150 police personnel.
So as a kid living in a motel, what did you do for recreation? I mean, obviously there was the can collecting, but beyond that, what did you do for fun when you were growing up in that environment?
So there was, down the street from me, there was like residential homes that I had, you know, a handful of friends down there. One became a really close friend. I would sneak out. You really can't do that in a hotel room, right? But I would avoid going home, and I would stay with him, you know, quite a bit. And I was fortunate that him and his family would lie for me and like take me in, and you know, so I had some sort of normalcy, you could say.
Normalcy. That's what it was for you, though. You kind of, what normal is for most, that wasn't your reality.
I mean, that's a good point. Yeah, normal, I guess what I envisioned was mom and dad sitting down having conversations with their kids or eating dinner together, not worried about the next, you know, TV show that's fixing to start, or, you know, having to go to bed early because you have to get up the next day. We don't have time for you, and, you know, things like that. I would spend a lot of time talking, which is still something I do a lot of today, but I would talk to just grown people, just hang out with them and watch them drink beer, watch them, you know, shoot up or whatever, hang out with them by the pool or wreak havoc was probably what I like to do around the hotel.
What kind of havoc were you getting into?
I would like knock on doors and run away. I would block the gutters, like the rain gutters. So when it would rain, it would like make waterfalls over it. It wouldn't go down the downspouts. I would the maids would come like clean the rooms, and I would steal the cart and like run down the thing. So basically I was just inconvenience. I wasn't really stealing it, but
it's mischievous.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was to entertain. Entertain yourself in a ecosystem of, poverty and just a lot of bad habits and bad actors. Was there a point where you saw yourself kind of, you could go down that route of being a bad person or a bad kid, other than just being mischievous? Because we all go through spurts of that, but you were actually immersed in that environment.
The opportunities were presented. They were endless. Yeah, I could have easily got wrapped up in drugs, drinking, sex trafficking, or been sex trafficked, or fighting. You know, I'm not left-handed at all, but I learned how to hit with my left hand because if you stand with your right shoulder up front, that's typically the shoulder you'll, hit with first or whatever. But, I could have easily got wrapped up in with the wrong crowd and things, but I became a compulsive liar for a really long time, and so I learned how to kind of keep my story straight and kind of get out of trouble, if you will. But then it started catching up to me in high school.
They always do. So when you're in high school, we all know the pressures of that, and you're you're living in an environment like that and you're going to school. What school did you go to?
Euless Trinity.
Okay. Is it still there?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So when you had your classmates and your friends, did they know where you lived, and did you hide that from them, or was that part of your lies and that you were having to tell?
That was a big part of it. Two of my closest friends, three of them, excuse me, they all knew where I lived. Nobody else did. I kept that pretty quiet. I wouldn't give out my phone number to anybody, because when you called the phone number, you would have to ask for my room number, 215, in order for them to get, put you through. And so I didn't want to have to explain any of that.
How are you as a student? Like, as far as grades, and pretty good student considering the circumstances and environment you were in?
I mean, yeah, considering the circumstances, I guess you could say that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I applied myself quite a bit. I learned pretty young that it didn't really matter. Just more effort was just meant more work, and I was get tired, versus all I got to do is pass. Like, GPA didn't really matter because I knew I wasn't going to go to college. And, I think a lot of the acting out and the class clowns and what we know now today as bullying I was just starving for attention. So even if it was negative attention, or if it was the quote unquote bad, I would do that just so somebody would pay attention to me or acknowledge me.
What year did you graduate?
2005.
And that's when you got an EMT in basic fire. When did you realize you wanted to go into that field?
So when I was about 10 years old is when I knew I wanted to become a firefighter. HEB, which was a school district that I went to, they had this program where you'd spend a few weeks with police officers, and they took you like through the jail, and we got to go on a short ride along, let you, they would let us like shoot radar, and just different aspects of the job. And then the rest of the summer we got to go like hang out at the fire station and spend a little bit of time there. And kind of then is when I realized that's what I wanted to do.
What appealed to you most about that?
Probably the family aspect of it. I mean, I know I had family, like people were in my life, but I really wasn't a part of it. And so when I was at the fire station and I saw the way that they kind of interacted and they were like really close to one another, I just instantly like was drawn to it.
Because that's something you had been lacking in your life.
Mm-hmm.
From that, what else drew you to that profession, other than just the family atmosphere, which still exists to this day?
Backdraft,
that movie, Kurt Russell.
Yep.
Okay. Is that your favorite fire movie?
It probably is, yeah.
Yeah. All right. What about it? It's how cool it was, or Kurt Russell was pretty great in it?
I really think it was just, the action stuff and just the things that they got to do. And I can't really pinpoint exactly about it, but I know that's not like the most glamorous like thing that got me into this. But
Didn't Howie Long do a firefighter movie too that was pretty awesome?
Okay. I remember him throwing an axe over his top of his head. Remember that movie with Howie Long? I had to look that up. There was also a good firefighter TV show.
Firestorm.
No,
Nope.
That's the name of the movie?
Howie Long was Firestorm.
Oh, Howie Long, Firestorm. Have you seen that?
I've not.
You need to look it up. It's very low budget, but it's actually entertaining. Get a cool flat top. What's the firefighter show that had the comedian that he was the lead in it, but it was a serious role, and he kind of was a piece of.
It was Dennis Leary, right?
Dennis Leary, yes. Do you remember that show?
No, I just look like I watch a lot of TV, but I really
don't.
don't.
He's kind of young too.
Yeah, you are young. Okay. Well, you need to check out that show. I'll get Kent to look that.
Is that Burning?
No, it wasn't Burning. Look it up if you get a chance. So when you started basic fire and EMT school, how'd that look? And how hard? What route did you get into that? Because you graduated, and what was family life like when you graduated? As far as support, you were still living. It was still the motel.
Yes.
Okay. And would you tell them, hey, this is what I want to do, or did you just go do it?
Yeah, 2 days after I graduated high school, I moved out. I moved in with two guys that I met with at Spring Creek Barbecue, which was a restaurant that I used to work at.
What did your family say about this when you just moved out?
Yeah, honestly, I don't remember what they said. I don't really think I gave them an option.
You were just escaping.
Yeah, I'd been waiting
on.
to move out since probably 12 or 13 years old. I just didn't really have a place to go that I really thought I could go and, like, you know, make it work.
Once that opportunity came up, you just jumped on it, and you wanted to be part of the first responder world and the EMT and the firefighter world. Where did you go? What schooling did you go into?
I went to EMT school 2 days after I graduated, and then 2 weeks after EMT school, I started the fire academy.
Where was that at?
At Tarrant County College.
Okay. Now, as far as like expenses and how was that when you got into that? What kind of process was that to get into? Is this basically how did you pay for it? I mean, you said you were working at the barbecue, but so did you pay for all that yourself, or did you get a grant, or how was that? How'd you get into that?
So EMT school, I actually had 3 jobs right before the year before I graduated. I would work at a bagel place from about 4 a.m. to 8 a.m., and I would open there, and then I would go to Hurricane Harbor from like 9 to 4, and then I would work at Spring Creek Barbecue from about 5 p.m. till 10 or 11 at night, and I would just save the money that I knew I could pay for EMT school. I didn't know how I was going to pay for fire school. That was, I want to say it was around $2,200, plus you had to supply your own gear. And there wasn't any way I knew I could do that. My parents were never really an option to go to them for money or co-signing or anything like that. And so probably the other thing that led me into this job was, you know, as I got older, I've only been a believer for a little over a year. But, you know, I'm learning now that it probably was my calling, because it doesn't really make sense how I got here. Because really it really wouldn't have worked out, because to work at that Spring Creek Barbecue that I was working at and have the manager that I had, I had gotten comfortable with him over the years, and I explained to him, hey, I'd like to go to fire school, and but as a manager, I thought he was going to be disappointed in me because he wanted me to be a lifelong, like, restaurant person and all this. But he offered to give me the money, or he did give me the money to go to fire school. And then he also asked me, hey, how about asking some other fire departments if you can borrow their gear? Well, I lived in North Richland Hills at the time, and I lived right down the street from a fire station, and I just walked in there one day, just some snot-nosed punk kid, like, hey, can I borrow your gear? I need to go to fire school. And they're like, well, you can't have ours, but hey, our administration office is right down here. Why don't you go talk to them? And they gave me a guy's number. He was over training, and I went to go talk to that guy, and he, like, looked at me like, I can't believe you're asking me to use our gear. And then he said, give me about a week. And he let me borrow his gear, and kind of a pretty cool piece to the entire story. So I went to fire school from August to December, Monday through Friday, and then I'd go to Spring Creek Barbecue at night from 6 p.m. to close. Except for Friday nights, I would take that off, and then on Saturday I would work 4 a.m. to about 2-ish in the afternoon, and then I would work 9 a.m. to 10 or 11 p.m. on Sunday, so I get 40 hours. Well, Spring Creek, they had like a tuition reimbursement program, and as long as you passed, they would pay you 10 cents for every for every hour you worked for an A. And so I was real excited. I've never seen a check with a comma in it before, and so I made $5.15 an hour. And so I went up to him after he got paid that day, and we used to actually get paper checks. It wasn't just automatic, put in your account.
Your little bank draft back then.
Direct deposit.
Yeah, I don't even feel old enough to say that, but I do remember, though, I was so happy and, like, excited, and I tried to hand Tommy that check, and he's like, no, what is that? I said, it's the money. I want to pay you back. And he said, Merry Christmas.
Wow.
And I was like, what? No. And then he just walked off, and I'm like,
What was your manager's name?
Tommy Money.
Great guy, huh?
Sounds like
Absolutely.
Jeez,
Yeah.
he sounds like an amazing guy.
Good name.
Yep, Tommy Money.
So
He lived up to it.
Should have been a rapper.
Yeah.
having such a rough upbringing and against all odds, you showed your character. You showed your character at such a young age, working 3 jobs and following your dream to become a EMT and working towards your fire. Did you ever expect to go into this field?
So my mom told me when I was about 10 years old is when I remember seeing Backdraft, and I was like, man, I'm going to be a fireman. And she told me, sweetie, your mind will change so many times before you turn 18. When I was 18 years old, I walked across the stage and I graduated Fire Academy. And, I did invite her to that graduation. But I knew once I started the process of EMT school, I knew I'm going to be a fireman. I just didn't know when. I had tested a handful of places after EMT and fire, about 6 different places, and it wasn't working out for me. So there was a moment in time that I did think, well, I'm going to have to find a way to get my paramedic before, I can get hired somewhere. But I did, when I set my mind on something, I usually am pretty determined and won't really stray from the plan.
Sounds like it. You walked across that stage. Can you describe that feeling once you did it? You worked your ass off. You're talking about working 3 jobs. I know a lot of people that have a hard time even working 1 job. And you're putting yourself through, all of this, and you're learning new skills and new trades. And when you walk across that stage, can you describe that?
It was probably one of the first times in my life that I was like genuinely like excited for something, or like I was, like I felt like I accomplished something. I played sports and we made it to like semifinals and quarterfinals in football, and I got to run in the Texas relays, and I qualified for state at one point, but nothing really compared to, when I walked across there. I knew there was still a little uncertainty because I hadn't got a job yet, but it was kind of the first step.
Absolutely. Once you did that, was your family there when you walked across that stage?
The only family that I really talked to or involved with is, you gotta bear with me here, but it's my mom's sister's ex-husband.
Okay.
So really my mom's aunt. So I guess it'd be like my great aunt. But at the time we had spoke to both of them, and I invited them down, but both my grandparents are dead, and I don't, like I said, I don't know who my real dad is. And my stepdad, he died in like 2014. And my mom, she, I invited her.
All right. After you graduated, walked that stage, where did you go to apply?
I applied in Fort Worth twice. I applied in Kennedale, Garland, Denton, and I know I'm missing one, and then Waxahachie.
But not Dallas Fire right off?
I didn't have enough college hours.
Okay.
They gave me college credit for EMT and fire, but I think I only had like 30-something hours, and you have to have 45 to get hired.
Okay, you're close. So where did you get hired on eventually?
Waxahachie.
Okay. How was that when you first got going in there?
I was pretty stoked.
Okay.
I was like on top of the world.
For the listener, Waxahachie, south of Dallas. It is like probably like 20 minutes south, right?
20, 30 minutes.
Yeah, 20, 30 minutes south of Dallas. So how long did you work there?
About a little over 2 years.
Okay. What was your favorite part? Once you got there and you actually saw the family, was it what you thought it would be?
For the most part. There were some curveballs in there, but yeah, they took me in immediately.
What kind of curveballs?
Kind of the pranks, or kind of the, probably stuff that families really go through, but
You didn't experience that.
I wasn't, yeah.
Yeah,
I
you
wasn't
didn't know.
expecting it because I hadn't experienced it before.
You got that red family and they start giving it to you.
Oh, yeah.
So when you were working there, you're getting this experience, and did you know you would eventually try to go to another agency?
I did. My goal and hope, they got a new fire chief now, so I guess I can say this, but I did know that Dallas was kind of the end goal, but I knew I needed to go to paramedic school. I knew they would pay me to go to paramedic school, and so yeah, I got my probationary year out of the way, and then they put me through paramedic school, and then the next year I applied in Dallas.
Why Dallas? What you said that was the end goal, but what drew you to that?
Just big city. You know, I didn't want to, and this is no, like jab at them by any means, but I didn't want to just wear the T-shirt. You know, I wanted to actually do the job, and I know Dallas offered, the diversity, even in the city, right? Like if you want high rises, you have high rises. If you want smaller houses, we've got the areas with smaller houses. You want apartment fires, I mean, they have that to offer. And that's the ability, opportunities to promote, the different specialties that were available. I saw that as the opportunities were endless.
Yeah, that's also a draw for the PD as well when we have people apply here, because everything you just listed, that's what Dallas Police has as well. They have all these different units and just specialties, and you could, you mentioned the apartment fires versus the fires that are on the larger property. I mean, everything's there, and then you have there's enough. You know how many medical emergencies are in this city. So when did you hire on?
I got hired on the fire department in 2009.
Okay. Where did you first go?
Since I was already certified, I had to go do 10 shifts or 20 shifts on a truck, and I did that up at Station 20. And then I did 10 shifts down at on Engine 40. And then I got my first assignment at Station 19.
Okay, where is that at?
It's in East Dallas.
Okay. Is it north of 30?
It is.
Okay.
Is that kind of like a field training deal where you have to work different stations and kind of do a couple shifts over here and a couple shifts over there?
Yeah, they try to keep at least the first part of the training, they keep it pretty consistent and try to keep you with the same officer and similar crews and things like that to give you a chance to kind of loosen up and them to get to know you, and then, the consistency of them trying to teach you the job.
What was the culture like there in that fire station? And you worked in through your career, you've worked at different ones, you've been around different folks, but the culture that was actually in the East Dallas fire station, what was that like?
Culture was a blessing. It'd be a mystery to me today to see what my life would look like if I hadn't gone there. Those guys were, I knew I had to keep my head down, my mouth shut, my ears open, and do my job. I know I had to be the first one to work and the last one to quit. But they truly took me in as family. They took me in immediately. I became a sponge, and I think they picked up on that pretty quick, that I was willing to learn anything that they were willing to teach me. Training was a part of what they did. It was just kind of a part of their daily routine. It wasn't something that had to be forced or kind of like push it out of them. The lieutenant there, he took so much time and effort and just kind of like poured into me, and not just about being a good firefighter, but how to, how to love Crystal, better, and how to be a good person and have integrity. And because I was resorting back to what I knew, and I would, like throw stories out there like, I was cool, I told this person off, or I treated this person, like crap on a run or something like that. And he would just like, Casey, that's not what we do. That's not who we are.
Who is that lieutenant?
Brian Corley.
Is he still active?
He's not.
Okay.
No, he retired a couple years ago, but we still keep in contact though. He told me, because he would always, all I want to do is ride the right side of the engine, and right side of the engine, that's who gets the nozzle on fires, and that's really all I wanted to do. And he was not okay with that. He wanted me to drive, and he would move my gear and put it up front, and he would leave his helmet up there, and that's kind of how they identify rank in the fire department. And I would kind of argue a little bit, like, Lou, just let me be a rookie. Like, let me be a kid, like I want to do this. And he was like, if I teach you to think like an officer, help you make decisions that you can reasonably justify, I don't ever have to worry about you making decisions on the ambulance or when I'm off or anything like that. And let it be known, he did that to every firefighter that came through there. And so basically we didn't all think the same, but we all strategized the same. We'd all, we already knew kind of where each other were coming from.
So did you have to go through basic academy with Dallas?
I did. I went through like an abbreviated version. I think it was 8 weeks.
And how many people were in that with you?
9.
9 other people? And do they send everybody just to different stations and spread you guys all the way out, or did you have another new guy there with you?
No, they just scatter us across the city.
So you're the one new guy at your station?
Mm-hmm.
That's got to be intimidating.
I'm it.
Yeah.
So you feel that that lieutenant making you do a variety of different jobs made you a more well-rounded?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, he challenged me quite a bit, but it was definitely for the better.
Yeah, well, that leadership, it sounds like it began that leadership, and you said that's how he was with everybody. He established a culture of looking at the bigger picture as opposed to going to just within 6 months, going to X amount of calls or he tried to lay the foundation and road work for you to have a long career with different paths.
Right, and just like for an example, it was just little things. Like, on the ambulance, you don't really get to fight fire here, but you still are needed in case that there's a victim inside or in case a firefighter goes down. The ambulance is already on scene and you can transport him to the hospital. Well, they don't teach you in rookie school to, 5-inch hose, when it's full, you can't drive over it. Otherwise it'll break. And then that's the water supply that's feeding the fire engine, that's giving the firefighters inside the water to put out the fire. And so just thinking about little things about not getting blocked in by that hose for just in case. And there may be several fires in a row that a fireman doesn't get hurt or they don't have to go to the hospital, but it's just that one time. And there'd be countless times that people, not at their own fault, because if we're not taught and we don't really think about it, then we're not going to know. But it's just when he would help us think through things like pretty methodically, it was just little stuff like that it really started to add up over time. Or like even on motor vehicle accidents, the ambulances, we would park inside, closer like to the wall where the engine and trucks would be a little bit further out, you know what I mean? So our little work zone was a little bit more protected, where others, or if I wouldn't have had that conversation, I may have just pulled up in front of the wrecked car or whatever and just get out.
True leadership there. The other, your coworkers, your family there, were they fairly young too?
No.
Okay. How did they treat you when you showed up? Other than the pranks and you're already grinning, but how was that for you?
So I was a rookie. I knew I had to earn my role. I knew I had to gain their respect. But that's what I was alluding to earlier. Like, man, they truly took me in, and they would talk to me about like my finances. I mean, one of the guys, he said, "Hey, do you put into your 401k?" And I was like, "No, during rookie school, everybody comes in there, asks you for money, and then you got to get benefits and all this stuff." And which now, I mean, we get paid pretty well, but it's still like everybody coming in there and kind of, inundating you with money. I was like, no, I don't need to worry about that. I'm 22 years old. But he, put in the number to the phone and called. He said, "Here, talk to this guy." And I'm like, no, Donnie, no. And he said, "Just put in $25 a paycheck." And then, it's really a percentage. But he said, "If you need $25 next paycheck, come ask me. I'll give you the $25. Then he showed me his phone and the account, and I'm not going to put his business out there, but it was, well over $100,000 that was in there. And he said, that's from $25 a paycheck for my entire career. And he had only a couple years left. And he said, "If you need $25 next paycheck, come ask me." And I talked to the guy, I did it. And then I forgot that I even put it in there,
Yeah, you're right. There's so many. We got associations showing up. You got to pay this insurance. You get in the dental, the vision. Everything adds up. And I was the same way. I didn't want to put anything in a 401k because I wasn't looking past the hood of the car. I wasn't looking down the road at a long career. That's great. It sounds like a hell of a culture over there at that Station 19. So what the veterans, they had been there a while. What was mental health look like whenever you got there, as far as taking care of yourself, self-care? Was that talked about? And we're going to get into why I'm asking this now later on, but I just kind of want to set the tone of how it was back then.
It really wasn't talked about, but I think some people were good at it and others were not. Again, that same lieutenant worked out every single day. He was very big on his showers. Like he would allow us, not a lot of us took him up on it, but he would tell us that if it's anything basically but a fire or like an extrication or something, like we can, we'll make this run with 3 people. You just stay there and enjoy your shower. Like take time and get a good shower. And he would spend a lot of time in the shower, and he ate really well, and he prayed every morning and he went to church, and he wouldn't push any of that stuff on us, but he damn sure modeled it. He modeled it, but no, we never really talked about it. And at one point I actually went up to one of the crew members and I asked him, hey, why aren't we talking about suicide? Because there was a lot of people up in the Northeast that were taking their lives back then. And they told me that, I don't know, but we're not really affected by that here. And being at a specialty station, I thought, man, if like these guys, we're kind of the cream of the crop. Like if they don't care about it, and they've been on a long time, who am I? Like, I guess I shouldn't really worry about it either. And then I just went on about, my business.
You just fell in line.
Yep. Basically just, did what they did.
Do you think that him pushing that shower time was more for a time of reflection and to decompress?
Probably.
Or was he just playing with himself?
He was not doing that. Because it wasn't so much the time that was in the shower with the water on you. He always had these particular sandals, and he would put this towel on the ground, and he might like pluck his a little bit. He would measure his eyebrows, or he would like fix his hair, and he didn't really have much, and he would
sound like the SWAT guys.
No, I'm just kidding. That's what I was just thinking.
So a lot of it was just, he may have been doing some self-reflecting. The other stuff was just kind of something to do while he was doing that.
I think it's inappropriate to bring up SWAT hair with the Claggets in the office.
Steve
has beautiful hair.
He does have very beautiful hair. At what point you come from Waxahachie, which is a smaller town, and you get it, you wanted it, you asked for it, you got it. You got the big city of Dallas. At what point did you just start working this city and go, holy shit, this is a violent ass city? And there is more to do here than I imagined. Was there any particular calls that you went out on that you were just that surprised you, or just kind of your level of maturity or skill set in life experience that just kind of rocked you that you can remember early on?
Yeah, so I got to 19s in July 7, 2010, and it was just, I don't remember the exact day, but it was a couple of shifts after that we had just got there in the morning, and I was on the ambulance that day, and we had responded just south of 30, around the corner from Fair Park, and a guy's head was he was found dead in the backyard with his head squished like with a rock. And then I thought, man, this is the real deal here, and looking around like I was going to see the person who did it, but there wasn't anybody around.
Probably glad he wasn't there.
Yeah.
Did you notice a change in yourself as far as, Dottie had talked about before when she came on with her and Steve, and I know she doesn't want to talk in this one, but compartmentalizing what you see and what you experience. How did that process look for you as far as just having your own way of compartmentalizing it and packing it away?
I think for me on the job, it looked like it looked really good, and it looked like I was really good at it. But I guess with anything else in life, if you've done the same thing over and over and over again, we do get good at it. And I ended up learning down the road that that's basically how I made it for a really long time. Is I didn't really spend a lot of time in the moment focusing on it. Like even the guy, in the backyard. Basically, there's not a lot we do there, right? We show up, we prove, we have to run an EKG, to prove that it's dead, and then we do the report and then move clear up and then get the next run. We didn't spend a lot of time sitting there trying to dwell on it. And I guess I can add that my first 5 years on, I averaged about 1,000 hours overtime. So I was constantly working. I think that adds up. I did it one time 3 to 4 months extra on the job, and but I think I was using work to, for one, avoid going home, because I knew when I went home, I turned into a monster, and so at least at work I could kind of vent to some of the patients, or it seemed like every shift we'd find one person and kind of take it out on them and then rotate around. That way nobody felt really targeted. But I don't really feel like there was any particular run that really shook me. And I'm not saying that I promised to be macho. I'm not saying that, I wasn't affected, because obviously I was. But really, when I started going to therapy, one of the hardest things for me to do is getting back in touch with my emotions. I was so good at just cutting them off that I didn't really feel, which looks really good on the job, but it looks terrible, when you go home.
You think you had to do a lot of that growing up too?
I think that's where I learned it. And, because the people in the hotel, some of them would, I would start to get close to them, but then they'd move away. Or a teacher, they might become like a mentor to me, or I'd be getting really close to them, and then the school year would be over. Or, there was just different people that there was no consistency in who was going to be there. And so I was basically just well, I can't rely on anybody else, but I know I can rely on myself.
What was home like life? I know you married your high school sweetheart, and you said you just kind of touched on, you went home, you become a monster. Can you describe where you were at in your marriage and how that looked at that time when you were at 19?
So that's where I ended up getting married. Not at the station, but during my time there, I got married on 11/11/11, and I'm the jerk that gets married on Veterans Day, and I'm not a veteran. Sorry, veterans. I tried to push it off to 12/12/12, but my wife,
easy dates to remember.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that was nice, and it was a Friday night too, so I thought that was a little ironic, but we were together for about 7 years before we ended up getting married. And I always said, I want her to be self-sufficient. I want her to finish school. And I kept coming up with all these different reasons why, but ultimately it boiled down to, I was scared. I was scared of making that commitment, and I didn't want to be trapped, because I didn't want to be another statistic. I didn't want to be another divorce. And I knew, or I believed that, I'm an a-hole. I'm a jerk by nature, and that's just who I am. And I say stuff at the most inopportune time. And, that's who I was, and that's who I believed. And so I really was thrown off the fact that, why is this woman still with me? I don't understand, because her family was way better off than mine was. I was with her for 2.5 years before she ever even learned that I live in that hotel. And the only reason why she found out is because she asked my little brother asked her for a ride home from football practice when I was at the fire station.
Do you think not having someone to model what a relationship should look like contributed to your behavior?
Absolutely. Yeah. Now, I don't say that because there are people. I don't say that in a derogatory manner, because there were people in my life that I do think that showed me what a man was, and showed me what it looked like to be responsible, what it looked like to love someone. But yeah, but I didn't get to live with them, or I didn't get to be around them all the time. So I really couldn't translate that into my own personal life. It's almost like learning like our mess ups and like who we are and like, or what we're looking for, like in a woman or something like that. And I feel like women are probably the same way with us. I mean, they've got to learn what they like and what they dislike and things. And, again, I don't think I would let, I think that, I was a young little cocky whippersnapper that, I feel like quite a bit of women would talk to me, but I would not pursue them. I wouldn't let them in because, again, I was afraid of them leaving or being pushed down. And so for her, it was, I knew she was different, but I didn't know why.
Do you think you were trying to, maybe there was a little bit of sabotage and you were trying to drive her away?
100%. I wouldn't say drive her away, but because she would tell me like the good things about me. Like she would say, "Hey, this is why I'm." Because I would ask her straight up, like, hey, "Why are you with me?" Like,
did you believe her when she told you that?
No. I would ask her like, "Why do you stay here? What do you see in me?" And she would tell me, and she still tells me the same answers today. But it was just kind of hard to believe.
You felt you weren't worthy.
Yeah, but things changed a little bit when she did learn I was in that hotel, and she didn't. I mean, honestly, when I met her, I pulled up to her house. It's a 2-story brick home. There's a Lexus in the driveway, and like, again, all those are materialistic things, right? But coming from nothing, to me, that was like, she's like 5'9", blonde, a cheerleader. I'm like, this ain't gonna last, but I'm gonna enjoy it while I have it, But and that's why I wouldn't let her know where I lived, because I knew. But when she found out and she stayed, it did mean something. But then, I saw that she was hurt because I didn't tell her, and then that affected me. And I was like, whoa, normally other people don't affect me. And so I was like, man, so this was different.
What is her name?
Crystal.
You better say it. I'm telling you, I've had a lot of people, and they don't give mentions of folks, and they'll be listening. I promise. Misty always talks about the mystique and mystery of fire stations. Can you give the listener a little peek? We tried to pull it out of David Lindsay and some other folks, and they kind of, they're like the Masonic Lodge, trying to get information out of. Can you give us a little peek about some of the mysteries, peek behind the curtain in that environment?
I'll do my best.
Don't worry, nobody listens anyway.
It's not Hollywood, so I was a little let down by that. Every run that we go on is not that true emergency, and I'm not downplaying.
It's not backdraft.
Right, yeah.
Rescue Me.
Rescue Me, yeah. Rescue Me.
Yeah, and the reality is we don't get to use our training and the skills that we spend months learning and all those like all the time, where that's where some of our frustration and stuff comes from. I might add that a fire station, although it's a public place, but when you visit a fire station, you're not visiting the fire station, you're visiting somebody's house. And so I just keep that in mind. We might not approach you first, the firemen inside there. But if you shake their hand, look them in the eye, and kind of approach them a little bit, almost like a peace offering almost, then they'll probably talk your ear off. There's a lot of pranks that happen behind the curtain, I guess. Wrestling for dishes.
Talk about some of the pranks. I want to go back to just real quick. Just spill some.
That's weird that you want to know about pranks, Joe.
Yeah, I want to see how they hold up to the ones that we've done.
So there's not a whole lot that are really coming to mind right now.
All right.
But
at least not ones you can share.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why are you so red right now?
Well, I'm just trying to breathe.
Yeah.
Gallows humor is happens a lot kind of behind the scenes. So if you're ever around, the firemen or you're visiting, don't take things personal. The rumor mill is, about as bad as what I can imagine like a high school cheerleader locker room would be like.
So close to DPD.
So we're we are
Similarities.
storytellers, but we won't let, a lie get in the good way, in the way of a good story, I think the saying goes. We pay for our own meals. We cook our own meals. We pay for Wi-Fi, cable. But despite all the pranks and people poking and messing with each other, when the bell hits, we get serious and we act professional and we take care of business.
You have to act as a team.
Right.
So when you talk about everybody, you cook your own meals, you kind of quickly identify who's the best at it and who just sucks, because it's like if you volunteer to go cook one of the meals, people are like, oh shit, no, we don't want him doing it.
So each station and shift's kind of its own culture and has its own way of doing things. Sometimes, the person that's not the best cook will volunteer, but most of the time, they all kind of do it differently, right? Sometimes it's on a rotation, so you get different people with different skills and things.
Culinary skills.
Others, they'll either order out or sometimes they'll like designate like a person that, hey, you'll be our full-time cook. So and there's some perks that come with that, but
Get to wear apron.
Some do wear aprons.
Yeah.
We have to stay clean.
Yeah, right. Hairnet and just the apron. Yeah, I always see the firefighters going to the grocery store, and they pull up in a fire truck, and they're taking up like 100 lanes or 100 parking spots, and they go in, and they're coming out with 2 basketfuls of groceries to take back home, basically.
So some fire stations have a lot of people in them, right? And normally they park right up front by the front door.
Yeah.
That's in case we get a call. We're not trying to just park in the way, or we're not lazy either.
It says fire lane. It's there for you.
Yeah,
That's
it's there
right.
for you. It's parking lane for y'all.
It's marked all the time, right? And we really do get cats out of trees.
Yeah. I've never seen too many cat skeletons hanging in trees. So it's funny. It's like, I don't think they really die up there.
We get calls to go get
They're very
cats out of
successful.
trees.
Yeah,
No cats die.
you're very efficient at your job. So I want to get into the type of training that you've had. Can you list some of the trainings that you've been on a while, but can you talk about some of the trainings?
Yeah, so obviously fire training. I'm trained as a paramedic. When I was at 19s, they're one of 2 of the specialty stations for USAR, which is Urban Search and Rescue. So there we kind of have to be like high angle rescue, like structural collapse technicians, like trench rescues, medical specialists, like some extra training in vehicle extrications. And I've also done some boat operations, swift water rescue training and stuff, things like that. Also some of the mental health trainings I've had is like through group crisis intervention or safety planning intervention for suicide. I'm an assist trainer. I've been to a whole bunch of like peer support trainings. I'm a certified EAP through the Labor Assistance for Professionals. And then recently I just became an IAFF peer support instructor.
Nice. So I want you to describe some of the types of training to a layman like myself. Johnny at Legends Fit, he's a Dallas firefighter. He listens to these, and he lets me know whenever an episode sucks and doesn't suck, and he's very well aware you're coming on. And kind of describe, like he was explaining to me, little things like the tempered wood burns a different way, and the chemicals that are in treated wood, after 1960, little things like that. Is that some of the instruction and training y'all get?
I wouldn't say as a department we get things like that, but we have different backgrounds, and we're people too, like on our days off. And so we come across different people with different backgrounds, different trades, and things like that. So we do have people that are involved in the hazmat world, or we do have people that are involved like in different building construction, which is something I feel like we should talk about more.
Yeah.
Because inevitably learning that kind of stuff and how the flow paths of fire and, smoke reading classes and stuff like that can really, help save your butt, especially when stuff's going bad.
So you have a pretty good training program there.
The fire, we're getting a lot better with the training division and things like that. We're starting to look outside the fire department, to kind of bring in outside perspectives and again, utilize other people's skills, knowledge, and their abilities.
There are a lot of so the PD. There's a lot of outside training put on either by federal agencies or just other local entities that we pay for ourselves. Do a lot of the firefighters, do they do the same thing as far as paying out of their own pocket to go get additional specialized training?
We do. We've got a lot of guys that, they invest a lot of time and money themselves.
And that's because of that particular training or skill that the department doesn't offer, right?
Correct.
Okay.
So before all this training, was it more of trial by error and learning from your mistakes?
Some of the mistakes from like the ones that have come before us, one of the things after any kind of line of duty death, right, there'll be a whole bunch of NIOSH and OSHA and things like that. They'll all kind of come in and investigate those, because we try to learn from like what are some things that went wrong or what are some things that we could do different to prevent that potentially from happening in the past. But I think on a smaller scale, most of the stations and shifts are having those conversations within their own closed walls. One of the fire stations I was at, we built our own like roof prop, and so anybody knew that we had or somebody that wasn't necessarily experienced with truck work, because you could have on 20 years or 15 years and you've never ridden a truck, one with the ladder on top, and so you've never had to go to a roof and cut a hole. And what you don't want them to do is bury that chainsaw all the way down and start cutting through rafters. They're just going to town, and then the roof falls in, and you can potentially fall in the smoke of the fire. And so it's just little things like that. Another thing that we built at the fire station was it's called the Denver drill, where basically it was from a line of duty death up in Denver, Colorado. That it was a fireman that died in an office building, and the windowsill was so high off the ground and things. 100 firefighters actually touched that fireman and couldn't get him out the window, and he inevitably perished. But so firefighters, we take turns and stuff practicing on different techniques and different ways, both accessing them from the outside and accessing them from inside the building. But not all fire stations, invest the time and effort, but a lot of them do.
What's like just the individual has to have a thirst for knowledge of wanting to get better and as opposed to just taking what the requirement is when and the updates that you have to do. So to be a Dallas firefighter, do you have to have like quarterly trainings to keep up with the city's requirements or the state's requirements?
Yeah, so we have to do a lot of training because we have to do continuing education courses for our firefighter certification.
Yeah.
Then we also have to do it for our paramedic certification as well.
What commissions that? What's the entity that commissions that? It's like ours is TCO. What is y'all's?
Like DISHES, they call it, like Department of State Health, Texas Department of State Health Services.
Wow. That's a mouthful. So I want to. That's what I wanted to learn about. That's interesting because we know T Cole and all this, but we don't. I never heard of dishes. So fascinating. Yeah. You kind of chronicled your career life. Wasn't expecting this much in the life story, but it actually makes sense to me and started maturing you very quickly to get in this profession, the first responder world. You're just out saving lives. You made a career of saving lives and serving. But I want to take you back to a date in 2017. I have a piece of audio that I want to play for the listener to kind of add context and kind of kick this part of the story off. Okay?
All right.
Police right now, they're shooting at the ambulance. One of our guys just hit the ground. Police will be updated in 19. Reynolds. Code blue, 3125 Reynolds. With the AR, shooting the ambulance. One paramedic may be hit. proceed, Rescue 19. 784. Check out another rescue to this incident off of Reynolds. We got shot fired, male walking with the rifle.
That's 3 can at us.
Back to the street, over towards Oranwood. Everybody. Assist, anyway, assist. We got shot, we got DFR down. 36, I'm on route. I mean, 31. That is, I think Channel 3 got a DFR down on a 19.
4, I'm trying to announce it now. 3125 Reynolds, we have a citywide assist.
There. Full 40, put it in my box and I wrote.
10-4.
For Abby. Bravo 414, Abby. Inside of our squad car.
This way.
370, I need a officer over here by the DFR element, behind the DFR 19, to assist with this gentleman.
All right, Casey, that this is from an incident May 1st, 2017, over on Reynolds Street, which is in South Dallas. It's just south of I-30, close to Dolphin Road. You're up. Just kind of walk us through, tell the listener, just paint them a picture of this day, the initial call, and the response.
All right. Yeah, so it was a Monday morning, about 11 o'clock in the morning. Just a regular day. We were checking out the ambulance. I was on the ambulance that day, and we were checking out our gear, and we actually had some guests show up at the fire station, and they were going to talk to us about the church that they were a part of. It wasn't required that we sit in there, but, we were going to be respectful. And then right as we were sitting down, a call came in for a gunshot wound, and with the engine in the ambulance. We got in the ambulance and took off that way like we do. And on the way there, we had comments that read that it was a self-inflicted gunshot wound. And there was also another comment that said there was a male laying in the front yard with blood on his face. We kind of take a shortcut to those streets that are right there off Dolphin Road. There's a little back way into those, to improve our response time. And so as I pull up, I'm actually facing, if I would have kept driving, I would have literally been able to drive in the driveway of like our drill tower right there. But 3125 Reynolds is actually a vacant lot, and there actually is like overgrown grass there. But we're looking for a guy with blood on his face, and then Will ends up pointing like straight ahead, like, hey, there he is. And so I kind of pulled the ambulance up on a cross street called Owenwood, and I angled the ambulance away from the person laying on the ground because it was reported that he shot himself. And Will rolled the window down and told him, hey, man, put your hands above your head. And he complied, and he's like moving his hands over his head, but he's like kind of shaking them over his head, but he, looking back now, he was pointing. And so then I ended up pulling the ambulance. I just pulled up a little bit past him, so the back of the ambulance was even with him. Will gets out and tends to the patient. About the time, and then I get out with the radio and the computer, and as I'm making my way around the back of the ambulance, Will comes running around the back of the ambulance and says, hey, man, we got to get out of here. There's a guy with an AR. And he kind of points like through the ambulance. And so it's been reported that the suspect, he had been staying with a friend. He'd just been released from prison, and a person from church was allowing him to stay there. And the suspect gets into a fight with his girlfriend, and when she walks outside, she hears 2 gunshots. And later we found out that the suspect, shot his roommate, and then he shot his dog. And then so the girlfriend calls 911, and she says that her boyfriend shot himself, and then she repeated it again, her boyfriend shot himself. After that, the suspect, he ended up knocking out like a small pane in the window, and there was a neighbor that heard some commotion outside, and so he came to look, kind of see what was going on, and the shooter ended up shooting him. And then the neighbor, after he was shot, he took off running down the street. And then the suspect shot him again in the back. And the second time he was shot in the back, the neighbor went down. And then the neighbor, he actually called his brother. And he said, hey, man, or, I don't know really what it was said, but basically it alluded to, come over here. I've been shot, but be careful because the shooter's looking to shoot more people. And this was according to him. After that, the suspect came out of his house, walked across the street, and was kind of standing on the side of the house when we pulled up. So then, he was hiding on the side of the house. And so Will and I are now behind the ambulance. And when he tells me, hey, we got to get out of here, we're trying to look very quickly, to our left is like across the street and it's a corner house. That seems like way too far when somebody has a long gun. And then to run the other way, it's like you're on the same side of the street. That's not really a good idea, but we know that we're hiding behind a hollow fiberglass box, so we're not safe. The engine's about a block behind us, and they're starting to change their sirens and honk the horn and stuff to try to kind of like disrupt him or
distract him.
Yeah, in some kind of way. So just to recap, right? So Will and I we're standing behind an ambulance. There's a guy walking towards us with the gun, with a long black rifle is what I know at the time, but we learned later it was an AR on his shoulder. He's looking down the barrel of it, very calmly, very methodically walking down the sidewalk. He never ran. He never, changed his pace that I could see. And then we still have a patient that was laying there on the ground next to us.
So when you see this person walking with a rifle, it sounds like something that's kind of like out of a movie. I mean, I'm imagining it, and I'm sure the listeners are going to imagine the same thing. He's walking, and he's looking down the barrel. You had a person that was down. You go from rescue mode to survival mode very quickly. What went through your mind, if you can remember, at that point?
It might not be appropriate for the podcast, but basically kind of like, oh, crap. But again, there wasn't a lot of, there really wasn't a time to think. It was more of
matter of seconds,
just kind of reacting, and Will, telling me, hey, go get in the ambulance because we got to leave. It almost seemed like he didn't understand, or it wasn't computing to him, because when I walked up the side of the ambulance to try to go get in the cab, that's when the guy shot. He took a shot at us, and then so I ran back, and I'm sure he could see, because we kind of feed off of each other. And normally Will is very, very cool, calm, collected. He doesn't get rattled. But we were obviously rattled that day,
Of course.
But we're still trying to have a conversation, like, and kind of arguing, like we have to get out of here. Go get in the cab.
Well, the problem is, you're trying to get out of there, but you do have an objective, which is a down person. Was it hard to break away from that objective because you're there to save a person that's down, but now you're in a position where you have to save each other. You have to save yourself from a threat that usually you don't encounter somebody with a long rifle in that kind of circumstance, right?
Again, I don't want to sound macho or anything, but I honestly, it wasn't really a choice. It wasn't a conscious thought or effort like, hey, sorry, man, like the patient, sorry, dude, I can't take care of you today. I got to go. It was, basically the guy on the ground became extra. He was just there. Like we knew we had to get out of there, and we knew he wasn't coming with us.
Self-preservation kicked in. You're under attack, so that takes precedent.
It's actually interesting. After the call, I was like down the street a little bit, and one of the police officers came up to me, and he was like, "Man, are you okay?" And he put his arm around me, and I kind of smirked and looked at him, and he was kind of taken by that, and he's like, "Why are you smirking?" I was like, "I'm fine. I ran. I wasn't shot." He said, "Whoa. No, let me make it known to you. I carry a gun every single day, And if I show up to a routine call and then someone just pulls a gun out and fires at me, he said, it's not like the Wild Wild West. I just pull my gun out and just start firing back. He's like, brother, I got to back up, retreat, kind of regroup, and then pull my gun out, and take care of business. It's, which kind of made me feel a little bit better. And he's like, and I trained with my weapon. I very comfortable with my weapon. He's like, but you're talking, and I think that's where you were bringing up that mindset shift, but it was just automatic. Like there wasn't time to think.
And where were you at when you heard the first shots?
I was basically I was passing the box, like where the box meets the cab.
Okay.
Trying to reach for the handle of the ambulance.
And could you see Will at that time?
Will was behind the ambulance still.
Okay, he was still behind the ambulance, and you heard the first shot. Then what happened?
I ran back to the back of the ambulance, and then we were kind of looking back and forth, like kind of going back and forth about, I can't make it to the cab. I don't know what to do. And he said, we got to get out of here.
So at that point, was it just one shot, or was it a series of shots?
No, just one.
Just one shot, and then what happened after you were at the back of that cab?
He said, we gotta get out of here. And I was like, all right, I'm gonna try again, get in the back of the ambulance. And again, it wasn't a conscious thought, but I guess what I was thinking is I was just going to get in the cab and maybe just duck and, pull the transmission lever like all the way down and just kind of push the gas with my foot or something like that. But when I tried to go get in the cab the second time, I was able to actually touch the handle of the cab at that time, but the suspect was a lot closer then. Right there at the driveway, it was just a little bit past the front of the ambulance. And then he took another shot. And then that's whenever, things really started to change because Will's inside the ambulance. And now I don't know, basically, are we about to play merry-go-round around this ambulance? But knowing or thinking, all he has to do is just start shooting through the ambulance and he can shoot me.
So this was 2017,
yes.
Right? Which is a year after you guys did some pretty heroic stuff on July 7th of 2016. We'd already put into place some things with you guys having extra armor and things like that, correct?
We hadn't actually. I think the 780 cars, they're like our EMS supervisors. I'm not the best at timelines and things. I want to say either the battalion chiefs or the EMS supervisors had the ballistic vests at that time, but they were specific to those vehicles because the thought was, I'm assuming, that those will be used for active shooter incidents. So police will already be there. We can pair up and create that task force and then be able to go in and take care of business.
So what were your thoughts, and was there any discussion on the fire side of actually giving you guys weapons and arming up anybody in the ambulance or the trucks?
So with weapons, my personal thought was it wouldn't have done any good that day because for one, I don't know that I would have trained with it enough. And then I feel like I just would have stuck the gun kind of down the side of the ambulance blindly. And I can tell you today without a doubt that I didn't kill anybody. But if I would have done that, not everybody works during the day in that neighborhood. And so I potentially could have hit somebody that, that was innocent to the entire thing. I do think that there are people that, probably it would have benefited, but I don't think for me. And we kind of went back and forth with the ballistic vest stuff. Honestly, that day I can make it. I got to where the compartment where we normally keep them in the ambulance. I was able to get to that compartment. Honestly, I don't know without it being there. If we really would have thought, well, hey, if I just grab this, I can put it on, because in that moment, again, it was just time. Everything we were doing was almost
instantaneous,
just reactionary.
Whenever you said you heard the second shot, you actually were able to touch the handle. And where was Will at that time?
In the back of the ambulance.
He was in the back of the ambulance. Was it just another single shot, or was it a volley, or was Will hit at that point? At what point did Will get hit?
So I touched the handle, and then I go to the back of the ambulance, and now I don't know where the shooter is going. And he was a lot closer that time than he was the first time. Well, then I hear 2 other shots, and that the first guy that was shot initially, I looked the way of the gunshots, and I just see his shirt just is soaked in blood instantaneously. And I learned later the suspect had shot him 2 times in the back of the shoulder blade.
While he was down.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then so I just took off. I alluded earlier that I ran the Texas Relays a little bit, and I ran track, and it paid off that day. I ran the 100 and the 200, I guess.
You're running 4.3 that day. So where did you run when you left the cab? Where did you go?
I left from the back of the ambulance, and I took off catty corner to run behind a house that was across the street, because I was trying to keep the ambulance in between kind of him and I.
And what was the shooter doing at that point? Was he firing?
I later came to find out he was,
Okay.
because there was a metal fence that was up, like our panel, I guess, was up, and it would look like Swiss cheese.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't hear any of those shots during that time. I didn't look back. I just kept running, and it is interesting though, as automatic and just reactionary as I was. I do remember running across the street. There was a fence that was, between the 2 houses, and I literally was looking like which driveway was I going to run up, because I was trying to figure out which house, had a dog and which one didn't. But I just chose the one on the corner.
So you had that auditory exclusion as he was firing at you.
I didn't hear anything. Yeah. And I hadn't had any nightmares or anything about that event until after we were doing the after action, and we were kind of standing in the street and kind of reviewing the incident. And, one of the people that were in that group with me, he was like, had his hands in his pockets, and he's like real anxious, and he's like kicking, just, and while I'm telling the story, and I keep looking at him, and he's a fireman, and I'm like, well, what's wrong with you? And he's like, it's just mind blowing that you're okay. He's like, look at that fence over there. And I looked at the fence, and I was like, I just remember taking this deep breath, and this huge, and I'm not using his name on purpose because I don't want to put any guilt on him, right? Because he didn't do it. But it was kind of like that surreal, like, oh crap moment, looking at that fence, like,
I was that close.
Yeah, because I had no clue.
So whenever you go behind the fence, you just heard, the listener just heard the audio of the radio traffic. Was that you on the radio?
When I called Code Blue, and then...
What does Code Blue mean?
Send police help.
Okay. Because I wasn't aware, and a lot of the listeners I'm sure aren't either. Who else was on the radio talking that you just heard that said we have a firefighter down?
That was me.
Well, that was you. Okay. At what point did you know that we had a firefighter down when you ran? You were going up that driveway. When did you think that we had a firefighter down?
So when I was running, I went up the driveway, and I actually kind of, I made a left, like went behind the house, and then I jumped over the chain link fence and then made a right to go down the alley. And there was like an outbuilding right there. But about the time that I was jumping over the chain link fence, I heard like a loud yell, like similar to Hollywood, even though I keep saying this job is not like Hollywood, but it sounded just like that, a scream. And I was peeking around the building to kind of see where the shooter was at. I could see Will laying there, and about that time, the suspect walks right over the top of Will, and then he shoots him again. And, and he kind of, Will's arms kind of flail out, and, he goes limp. And I know in that moment that he's dead. And then the shooter, he drops his magazine, pushes the button and it falls out, and he had another one Velcro to him or something, and he puts it back up. We make eye contact, and then he just starts walking towards me. And, but behind the building is when I remember calling for a Code Blue and telling them, like, hey, I think one of the paramedics had been shot. So the engine and ambulance the operations for the fire side is typically on channel 1, and the ambulances, they usually operate on channel 2. So I couldn't hear, Lieutenant Terry and Engine 19 calling for help. And it's interesting. One of the things I was beating myself up over was, why did I wait so long to call for help? And I mentioned that after action, but the after action, when we were kind of talking through it, the original guy that was shot, he actually came out and we were able to talk to him. He doesn't speak English fluently, and so his English was kind of broken, but he said, we were asking him what happened, and he said, when the shooter came up to me, he asked me code blue or code black or something like that. And he said, do you think this is an effing game? You think this is an effing game? And then he shoots me 2 more times. He said, but then I just go limp and hold my breath. And then the guy kicked me in my ribs. And then he stepped over me, and then he started shooting the paramedics, which he will never know. But like, that was such a relief, because I was like, oh, I didn't wait so long, because that audio didn't come out until, or at least I didn't find it, or I think it was actually sent to me, and it was several months after. And that guy doesn't know what code blue or code black or anything like that is. And so, man, that really felt good that I did call. The other thing that I felt that I did maybe right was that I don't remember doing was behind that building, when I'm trying to let them know that, hey, this paramedic's been shot. I knew that 784, that EMS supervisor, had assigned himself to the run. But I was telling him, like, hey, stay out of here. Like, don't come in here, because this guy's going to shoot us. But after we made eye contact, I just took off running down the alley, and I'm running from like fence to fence, just like zigzagging down the alley.
Is he firing? Is he firing after you make eye contact and you're running? Did he continue to fire?
So I didn't hear it. Even in the alley, I never saw him. I never saw him again after that. I guess I can say that. And kind of a funny part about it is, when I'm running through the alley, there was a guy on the other street. He was mowing his backyard, and it'd be kind of funny or interesting to go ask that guy what he thought, that here's this white guy sprinting down a back alley with probably this oh crap look on his face, carrying a radio and a computer. All I did was kind of like glance over, look at him, and I didn't slow down. I just kept running, and be interesting to kind of hear what the thoughts were going through his head.
That guy lives on Reynolds. He knows how bad it is over there. He's another day to him. So
it's constant.
When he looks at you, I want to go back to this moment. When he looks at you, you make eye contact. You just saw your partner go down, and you just said you believed your partner was dead. Did you feel you were next? You were about to die?
I did. Yeah. And I don't think I was focused on me dying in that moment. I think it was, I remember thinking, at least I can say that I was wrestling with the idea of going back to get him. Like, I need to go back, but I know if I do right now, like he's going to kill me. But then when we made eye contact, I thought, I got to go. Same thing with probably the first patient, like,
right,
I'm next.
So you run down the alley, and you don't know. I know you say you don't know the shots are coming, but they are. What happened then? What did you get to a point where you stopped?
So I slowed down. I didn't stop, but I slowed down at the end of the alley when I got to that next cross street. And then I saw a squad car go driving by. And, I loved seeing that. And so I kind of rounded the house, like kind of bubbled out, if you will. Because I thought, I didn't know if the shooter was going to be standing in the front yard, like waiting for me or whatever. I figured if I got out in the middle of the street, I may get shot, but at least the police are going to see me, and then, they can help me or whatever. But so I was running down the middle of the street, headed back to go get Will. And I think all I was going to try to do is pick him up, throw him in the floorboard of the ambulance, and drive like hell. And there was a squad car that was parked in the front yard, like next to the ambulance, and he kept using both arms to like wave me down, like telling me to duck or whatever. And I just kept pointing to Will where he was out in the road, and I don't know if I was saying cover me, but in my head I was screaming like, just cover me. But again, that may be Hollywood. But I remember pointing to him and running, and that guy, I mean, he just kept using both arms, like trying to tell me to get down.
I believe that was Sergeant Rob Watson. He on the radio traffic was 370. I believe that's Rob Watson, Sergeant Rob Watson, and Thomas McPherson was one of his troops, and Chase Bruce. They responded. I believe they were the first to respond in the squad cars. Kent, you were in SWAT at the time. Where were you at in all this?
So anytime there's a citywide assist, it turns into chaos. I don't know why we continue to do those. Granted, we want as much help as we can get, but you get everybody in the city that's free and available coming to one centralized location. It never works out, right? It jams up all the traffic getting into it. If you actually get to the place, if you have people coming from other divisions that don't know where they're going, there's a problem there. The radio's tied up. I couldn't get any good information. I was trying to listen, switching back and forth between different radio channels, trying to figure out what was going on. On top of just Dallas PD, we had every organization in the state respond. The feds were there. We had game wardens, which we've never had before. We had sheriffs. We had city marshals. So the communication amongst all those groups turns really bad really, really fast. But somebody took charge and actually started running things the right way, and we ended up getting the whole place surrounded, and obviously we'd do our thing. But it was pretty uneventful from my side. I mean, it's one of those deals where usually when SWAT shows up, everything's pretty much under control. You know, if it's not under control by the time the SWAT team gets there, then that gets really, really dicey.
Casey, when the sergeant starts waving you to get down, get back, did you see him? Did he eventually go out and recover Will?
Not that guy. His
different one.
His
Okay.
car was like parked up in the yard.
Okay.
And maybe there was two other squad cars that I remember. They were parked. Well, that doesn't make sense because I don't think there was enough room in the street. Maybe there was enough room to drive around him or something, but they were there. I saw those other police officers there, and I could hear that gunfire, them exchanging bullets. But I finally ended up getting behind, like ducking down behind a van. Mm-hmm. Later to find out I was in front of the shooter's house, but I was across the street. There was a squad car that came from Dolphin Roadside, and he pulled up in there, and there was about three of them that were picking Will up. They had his hands above his head and his feet, and they'd slide him in the back seat, and then they pushed him too far, and then they would shut the door, and then they have to slide him back because his hands in his feet. And I was just sitting there waiting, though, for them to tell me, okay, come on, so I could go get him. But they ended up transporting him, and from what I understand, the cop, ultimately saved his life. He pushed the gas and didn't let off from what he said. And that 2nd Avenue exit, for people that don't live in Dallas, is a pretty sharp turn. He took it probably going, very, very fast. I don't want to get him in trouble, but.
Yeah, it ain't going to get him in trouble.
But no, that was pretty. But I knew pretty scary what I was going to say. But in that moment, though, I knew, again, I was just like, man, I know he's dead. And so I lay down between the tires and the curb, just I want to be off the ground a little bit, but I want to try to, like, not be seen because I still feel like the shooter's behind me. And I call my captain at 19s, there's an engine, truck, and an ambulance. So the engine and ambulance are on the run. So I knew the truck was still back at the station, and so I called him and I said, "Hey, go to Baylor. Will's been shot." And he said, "Do what?" I said, "I got to go to Baylor." And I hung up, and then another squad car pulled up, and I hear this, psst, and I kind of took a deep breath and thought, "This is it." And I turned around, and this cop car was going real slow, and again, I'm paraphrasing, but he was like, "Hey, man, I'm going to slow roll you." I have no idea what that means, but he said, I'm going to pull up next to you. I'm not going to stop, but get in my back seat, and we're just going to go. I said, all right. And I open up the back door. I lean in. I think he just takes off. Half my body's still hanging out. It wasn't dragging, but I guess inertia, lifting my feet off the ground. But We went like one block, and he said, "Get out." I said, "Okay," and then I got out, shut the door, and he drove off. I don't think I ever saw him again. But at that moment, I was pretty surrounded, by, like Kent said, there was hundreds of cops there and things. And that's when, my wife calls me, and she said, hey, are you okay? I said, yeah, I'm on a call. Do you mind if I call you back? And she said, yeah, okay. And then we hung up.
Whenever the officers extract Will and put him in a squad car and just shag ass out of there, they were in a gunfight still. Were you still hearing gunshots when you were watching this, or was the suspect already down? Do you know?
I don't know when the suspect was taken down. There wasn't, from what I remember, exchange of gunfire. There was a couple police officers that had their guns drawn still, and they were kind of hiding behind this, not the corner house, but the house next door to it. There's like a little, probably 2 or 3 foot little brick wall there that they were kind of hiding behind, and they still had their guns drawn, but it took 3 of them, to load him up in the car. And
you still believed he was dead at that time when they loaded him up?
Will, yeah,
yes.
I thought the suspect already got away in my head, like he had already got up.
So the officer, he basically provided a rolling barricade for you to jump in and get you out of the hot zone.
Mm-hmm.
And when you were dropped off, kicks you out of the car, and he takes off. What happened then? That basically, at some point, the suspect took his own life, and then it just became a massive crime scene. At what point did you get word that Will was still alive?
After I got to the hospital. So I went a block, and he asked me to get out. By this time, there's a handful of chiefs, and I don't honestly know. There was a bunch of fire
everybody.
units.
It was everybody, yeah,
that were there. One of them in particular, like one of the battalion chiefs, she kept telling me, like, I want to hear your voice. Like every few minutes, I'm going to be talking to you on the radio. And I was probably not so nice to her. I kept telling her, like, well, if you're going to hear my voice, I don't want to hear anything from you except for if Will's dead or alive. Looking back, they're not going to tell me over the radio. And then come to find out, she had been working this entire time to just get me out of there. If they just would have taken me to Dolphin Road, well, now basically it's a barricaded person call, and all these fire units can get the heck out of the way. So I know that was some of the frustrations on their side. I don't know exactly at what moment they at one point a cop was like, hey man, you want to come get in my car? And he just drove me over there to Dolphin Road. And that was a normal drive. Like, we just drove. And during that time though, they're trying to ask me, I know it's hard, but what was he wearing? Or they're trying to give me like bottled water, and the helicopters flying over, the perimeters being set up and everything. And I didn't know at that moment, am I mad? Am I sad? I didn't really know. What I wanted to know was, is he dead or alive? Like, I already know that he's dead. Just tell me so I can have closure and I can start preparing myself for what comes next. And so they finally take me over to Dolphin Road, and then I'll never forget one of the chief's drivers, Chief Milam. He's a chief now, but he was a driver back then. He's, a monster of a man. Just
Milam, he's a great guy.
Huge guy. Yeah, he's awesome. And he kind of like looks at me, and he's got this big mustache, so you can't really tell his facial expressions a lot of times. And he puts his arms up like if you were to say, I don't know. And I just stopped, and I was like, what did I do? And he takes the radio from me, and he takes the computer from me, and he just throws it in the back of the chief's car, and he gives me this, massive hug. And he was like, why do you still have the radio and the computer? I said, well, I didn't want to have to pay for it. And he just, squeezed me harder, like, you poor guy. Like, that should have been the least of your worries, but I don't really know if that's the reason, or if it was just, that a nervous response. I just didn't let it go, but.
Yeah, you probably didn't realize you were still holding it.
No.
Yeah, he's a Chief Milam. Is he over the training now?
Mm-hmm.
Great guy. I actually want to get him on this show as well. We've talked, and we've talked about the ATO. He and I have talked recently about what we do here. I want to get him on.
I'll see what I can do to help you out.
I got to sell. He said yes. It's just one of those. You quickly got off the phone with your wife. At what point did you just finally have a conversation with her? This is what happened. This is what I just went through. How'd that go?
Well, sadly, she didn't get that, where we sat down and had the conversation. Another police officer, he took me to the hospital. When I got to the hospital, there wasn't anybody in the ER. It was real eerie. There was like fire units lined up on one of the side streets, and then cop cars everywhere. And, so again, I'm like preparing to walk in the ER and find him in a body bag or, whatever death looks like in an ER. And I go in there and he's not there. And I'm like just looking around, like it's real eerie, and Will, he'd worked in that district for a long time. And for full disclosure, he's perfectly fine with me, talking about him and part of this incident and stuff. But, not thinking in the moment, but those nurses, they probably were affected just as much, because that was our primary hospital, that we would transport to. And then somebody had said, "Are you looking for the fireman that was shot?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, he's upstairs. And I'm like, well, this must be special treatment for dead firefighter. So we go get in the elevator, and then we go up to, I think, the 7th floor or something. And it's this great big open room. Kind of looks like a church area. And I open up, the elevator doors open up, and there's, chaplains and lawyers and citizens, off-duty people. No, I don't think citizens were there, but people in street clothes and stuff, and people are just all around. And I feel bad today, but like I didn't care to see them. I'm like, where did they put his body? Like, and they're like, oh no, he's still alive. And I was like, oh really? And they said, yeah. When he got to the hospital, Turner off Rescue 3 was standing there and opened up the back door of the squad car. He said it, just blood everywhere. He ends up putting a tourniquet on his leg. And the hospital staff brought a bed out, and Turner said he was talking to him, and he said they were classmates in rookie school, and he was asking him like, "Hey, are you okay, buddy?" And he said, I can't breathe. I can't breathe. And as soon as they put him on that hospital bed, he coded. And when they put him in the hospital room, they're doing CPR, and the truck crew that I had called and asked them to go to Baylor, they're standing outside watching this take place. And Dr. Isaacs, he's our medical director, he had actually shown up to Baylor Hospital, which, come to find out, he didn't, I guess, have practicing rights at that time in the hospital. But all those nurses were so grateful, because when he was in there, they still did their job. It's like they hit the panic button or something, and their job wasn't so normal anymore. And so they were kind of struggling with that. And Dr. Isaacs just showed up and, cracked his chest, cut him from one side to the other, and we're exposed his heart, and he's literally massaging it with his hand. He calls for blood. They start giving him blood, and his heartbeat starts again. And he says, "Hey, we got to take him to surgery." And Dr. Isaac said that when they cut him open from side to side, there wasn't one drop of blood that came out. He literally bled out every drop. And so, Will, from what we can gather, he doesn't remember, but we're assuming he climbed out of the back of the ambulance when he heard those 2 gunshots, and probably saw me running and tried to follow me. And that's when the shooter shot him, and the bullet went up, through his calf, and then exploded on his femur. And so 80% of his femur was shattered, and all of his knee, and then the majority of his tib fib. So we get upstairs, and there's all these people there, and well, obviously people are asking me what happened, and I don't even care to really talk about it. I'm just trying to find, where's Will? Well, then they tell me that they had put a plastic straw in his leg. He's intubated. He's still at critical condition. And I'm like, okay, what about his wife? They're Korean family, and she can speak English, and she understands it very well, but she doesn't really speak it well, and so now my mind starts going to, she doesn't know a lot of people in the fire department, and she didn't really know this culture. Like, we've worked together at that time, Will and I, for 7 years, and even coming to the station, she'd only say a few words. I mean, she's very, very sweet lady. She's just not very, personal and stuff when we come up to the station. But there's also a whole bunch of families there and things, and so they reassured me that they've sent somebody to go pick her up. And when she gets there, that's the first time that I had cried, because I just remember giving her a hug, and
it's that sense of I didn't protect him.
Mm.
Survivor's guilt.
It's really powerful, man.
Yeah, I didn't write this down because I wouldn't even talk about it, but but yeah, that was probably the hardest part of it all. Her not really understanding, and then thinking in my head, like those thoughts of behind the building was, I shouldn't leave him, and then that's why it was like validated right then. I was like, man. And she had, they had a kid on the ground. She was actually pregnant at the time. My wife wasn't pregnant, and we didn't have any kids at the time. And, and I didn't have any words to say, we just kind of held each other, and cried. And then I know the engine company was up there. I think I honestly don't remember. And then I finally came out of the room. They had a room for the family off to the side. And so I came out, and I just remember everybody asking me what happened. And people said I probably told that story, close to 300, 400, 500 times that night or that evening. And I was just like on repeat. I just kept saying it. And I know that was a long-winded answer to answer your question about when I told my wife, and she finally got to the emergency room. I mean, the hospital upstairs. And again, I was just walking around sharing the story with people, and somebody told me, "Hey, I think your wife's here." And I looked over, and when you gave her a hug, and she was just another person I told the story to.
We talked about earlier about DFR's culture is when it comes to mental health and self-care, and in policing we've had long stigmas, and we have the similar culture of not putting mental health and self-care in the forefront. How did that change you? And this incident is life-changing, and it's in your case it's kind of become career-changing of what you do now and what you do for your department. Can you kind of talk about that journey after this incident?
Yeah, so it's interesting. We didn't really talk about mental health, like I mentioned, and neglecting ourselves is really a big part of it. Like that night, I remember at one point in time, it was nearing like 11 o'clock, and my captain said, "Hey, I think we're going to get out of here." And I said, "Oh, do you mind if I go see him one more time?" I was able to go see Will in the room, and he said, "Man, you can stay here as long as you need to." And I said, "Well, I'm going to go get back on the ambulance." And he said, "Casey, you're off." I said, Off on what? Like, no, I need to go, and again, it's not a macho mindset, right? I think it's just culture, and it was just ingrained into us. Like you just don't quit. Like, and even if as bad as it sounds and as bad as it was, like there's still a job that needed to be done, but I didn't, I was neglecting myself. I don't know if I answered your question though.
No, I want to kind of get you into whenever you got into the peer support role and how that happened, because obviously I'm not saying you weren't a believer in self-care and mental wellness, and you clearly were not doing then what you are immersed in now, right? So it kind of looks like this incident set you on a path that you're still on. And I want to get into that.
Yeah, so after that incident, a few weeks later, one of the vice presidents for the Firefighter Association worked at my station, Charles McLemore, and he had they had got an email from Houston Fire Association, and they said, you know, hey, we're hosting this peer support training. Are you guys willing to send some people? What their mindset was, they were trying to reach around the entire state and find some of the bigger firefighter associations. They come down and then get your training and then take it back to your locals, and then it kind of spreads out, and then we have like this statewide program. Well, I didn't know all that back then, but so he had just asked me, hey, do you want to go to this training? And I kind of laughed at him like, are you kidding me? Like, I'm that prankster. Like, I piss people off daily. I'm not the guy that's willing to, like, you know, help people. Like, I mean, that didn't really compute to me. And so he said, yeah, you are. And he sets the paper down and kind of walks off. He's never told me this, but I believe that he was trying to send me to go get help, you know, because I was, you know, probably struggling through that time. And, well, when he set the paper down and kind of fell in the trash, he walked away. For some reason, I picked that paper up, I took a picture of it, and I put it back in the trash. Fast forward a few weeks, or maybe not even, towards the end of that week, I was sitting in Pagosa Springs and with my wife, and you know, I got to drinking a little bit, and I passed her my phone. I said, can you believe that the fire department asked me to go to this? And it was that peer support flyer. And she said, yeah, I do. And I was like, what? You know, and so we talked about it, and I was like, so you think I should go do it? And she said, yes. All right, well, we have to leave tomorrow because it was that weekend. So I cut her vacation short by 3 days. She's not frustrated by that at all. We literally land in DFW. I go home, I change clothes, and then there was actually 4 of us that went to that training, and one of the guys picks me up, and we head to Houston, and I went to that training.
How big of an eye-opener was that for you, going to that training?
It was a really big eye-opener. We had critical incident stress management, or CISM, for many years, but through my experience only, just sitting in that room and hearing the instructors. We had a, you know, battalion chief from Chicago that had been on, you know, 20-something years, and then we had I believe he was a lieutenant at the time from New York. They were down there teaching this class, and just hearing their experiences and just talking about like what peer support is. I was probably overwhelmed in like the first just few minutes of the program.
You think that was because you were actually hearing from some people that spoke your language and actually they got the culture, they lived the culture, and it wasn't Rick from HR up there telling you how to manage your inner thoughts and in your recovery.
I think you hit the nail on the head. Yeah, because the program it was built, you know, by firefighters for firefighters. You know, I mean, there was a psychologist that had influence and input and oversight, and it was almost like what people tell me all the time now is I help put their pain into words, but I feel like that's where I was at in that moment in training, that, yeah, all the frustrations or some of the things that I had been struggling with, they had, you know, put it very blatantly into words.
Well, it was kind of like them speaking a language for the layman, right? Because you were at that point, you probably had never heard that kind of talk. Especially now you're hearing it from somebody that they're firefighters themselves. They're accomplished. They've lived this life and culture, and they're actually up there talking. And I'm a big believer, and you know my thoughts on this, of if you have the right messenger to deliver a message, it matters. And if you have somebody up there checking off a box, or if you go to a counselor that doesn't understand the culture, it could really sour you, and you're not going to hear what's being said. You're not going to hear the message.
I agree with that. And, you know, and I know it's not right, but I would do it is, I think, coming from someone from Chicago and New York, like, in my mind, I hadn't been through anything like probably what they've experienced, right? Because, I mean, Chicago had a run of suicides, a short span of time, and New York, I mean, we know about 9/11 and things, and so just comparatively in my head, they are almost like the subject matter experts in this because they've been through it in quotations,
They probably also, well, look at it on another flip side, they probably didn't have a active shooter with an AR. They weren't in their crosshairs either. Everybody's got their own experiences, and so you go to that training, kind of have an awakening of sorts. What goes on next? Did you just say, I'm buying in. I'm buying into this peer support role, and how'd that look?
I did buy in, even though Dan DeGrice, he told me he's been teaching a lot of classes and been involved with this for a really long time, and he's never had somebody that talks so much sit on the front row and not say anything for 2 straight days. But he's the one that messed up because when I called him on Saturday, I gave him 1 day to travel home, and then I called him on Saturday because he said, if you need any help or any guidance on moving forward, call me. And then he messed up by answering that day because I hadn't stopped calling him since. But I knew, and your starfish stories analogy is a lot better, but I felt like we need it. The people, not everybody's going to buy in, and especially for me, like I didn't buy in, so I can't expect everybody else to, but I'm like a goldfish, in the Corpus Christi Bay. How do I get the big fish on my side and the little fish, and then, kind of bridge that?
You talk about the starfish story. You cannot save everybody, and not everybody is in a position and equipped at that moment to recognize that they need help or need to be saved. But if you don't try, and you may try your ass off, and sometimes you're just not always going to be able to save everybody, but you can make a difference. You can make a difference in everybody's life, whether it's being an advocate for therapy or going and speaking to groups. You may talk to a group of 30 and only 3 get something out of it. Well, there's 3 there that you helped.
Right. And for me personally, I don't ever want to push that message of we can't help anybody, because I don't want to ever validate that thought when somebody's,
right,
struggling, like, oh, I guess I'm that one they can't. Dan, he always says that suicide's preventable but not avoidable. For me, I the opportunities, right? I like giving, or at least want people to know, or at least have the opportunity to intervene, because I don't feel like I'm saving anybody, right? I just feel like I'm having the opportunity to either encourage them, empower them,
educate them, and maybe make them self-aware that they are in a position at that time. And you may not. People save themselves. They get to a point where they are self-aware and they save themselves. But you going to them and providing them information, and also just the support that can nudge them in a direction of being saved.
A lot of times we just share information and kind of open eyes to the possibilities, and bring that awareness to the person to where then they look for that help.
Absolutely. So can you describe what your role now is with in DFR?
It's hard to put it into words, but so I'm the peer support coordinator. They in 2022 they had the department. We had 3 suicides in 3 years, and we'd had several attempts. And I don't know if it's experience or reputation or me just being me. I don't believe it was me, but like you mentioned earlier, it does. The facilitator or the person, the messenger, has to be, a particular person, if you will. But the department had created that position, for me, with me in mind. But they made it very clear, like I wasn't forced to take it or anything, because it was a hard decision to make coming off the fire truck and, essentially not being a firefighter anymore. I still work for the fire department, but I'm not on the front lines as a firefighter anymore. And I was really worried about my reputation as far as us versus them. Am I one of them and not one of us anymore? Now he doesn't get it, or, all these different things. But I feel like a lot of those were kind of made up in my mind. But to answer your question, kind of what I do now is, in short, help the ones that help everybody else. When we're traditionally, yes, we've had EAP, and we do have an on-staff psychologist, and we have a resiliency coordinator that she coordinates and brings a lot of education and things, which I think is important, especially from the preventative aspects of it. But as far as having somebody, and I just lead a team, a peer support team. I'm not the only one that's doing it, but kind of lead them through, building that rapport, building that connection, and and kind of pairing people up with relatable experiences to try to give someone the best opportunity for the best outcome.
How was this received whenever you got involved, and what was your perception of how it was received coming from you?
Now or back in 2017?
The evolution of it. I mean, 2017 till now. I know it's still evolving, I'm sure, but just kind of describe that. So
back in 2017, it was like underground, unspoken. We don't talk about it, and I got involved when typically people are getting in trouble on the job, or things have gotten so bad at home that they were reaching out to like the e-board members through the association.
It's crisis already.
Correct.
It's a reactive method.
Yeah.
And so, and in Dallas, or probably other places as well, but maybe I can just speak from my own experiences, but after you go through a training, like, you're now the expert. The e-board members were just, hey, call Casey, and yeah, I didn't know what I was doing. But what I did do is I didn't BS anybody. I was just very upfront, very open and honest with them. But I think the biggest thing is I was able to relate with a lot of people, and one of the things that I've kind of learned is, our experiences are different, but our reactions a lot of times are the same. And that's how, we can relate to people that, sure, I was shot at, and you pulled somebody out of a burning car, when the fire engine wasn't there, or something like that. I feel like that's where we can relate is our response to that, whether if it's being angry or feeling like nobody understands, or feeling, that survivor's guilt or whatever. But fast forward, I still didn't believe that I was the person, because it was still just operating in the background, volunteer through the association. I had a lot of support through them. And then I even called like a few of the officers that I respect kind of around the city to figure out, like, hey, am I really making the right decision by taking this position or not? And then after I took it, the firefighters, a lot of firefighters, I can't say all of them, but a lot of firefighters were very excited. They were very receptive. They were very like, you are the person for the job, and pretty excited about it.
It's like that's a guy I could follow. Was it validating to see from your peers that their excitement and you taking it?
Eventually. I mean, a long answer is short. Eventually, I still was very hesitant, because there's not a one-size-fits-all program out there. There's not, and I didn't see myself, like, I guess it's very natural what I was doing. And so if you'd ask me what like you asked me, what do you do? And it's like, it's hard to explain it, because it's just kind of natural, right? To hearing horrible stories or hearing like things that people are going through in that moment, I don't really react, or, it doesn't really throw me off, because I don't know. I don't have an answer why, but I didn't receive it very well for a really long time, but I think that I'm doing better. That's something that I've been trying to work on, is kind of owning that and realizing, hey, I can't go in there doubting myself, but I don't want to seem like I forgot where I came from, and I don't want to seem arrogant or cocky, or like I have all the answers either.
No, none of us have all the answers, but better to have a answer than no answer when you go into, and you have, it sounds like you have the support of the people around you. For the most part, you're not going to always make everybody happy, but you can't even try. But I think they made the right selection. I want to go into the recently you got Tanya Glenn on board with your department and helping out with the training aspect. Why did you go that route and then to get her involved?
So she's been doing it a really long time, and I feel like she speaks our language. She's a lot of those big instances when I was talking earlier about like comparing traumas, even though we're not supposed to do that, I feel like a lot of us do that intuitively. But so she kind of brings a lot of that experience. She brings a lot of that knowledge. I feel like she has been kind of teaching or barking up that peer support tree for, since I think she mentions like 1993 in her trainings. And for the longest time, and I can't imagine how lonely it's felt and frustrating it is for, going around the country and building these teams and things, but still they're not necessarily buying into the model, but they're buying into what she's doing, but then they default to what they know. And then that's frustrating for her to come in. And so I think that it's important for us to hear those stories and for us to hear how, quote unquote bad or traumatized somebody was, or, people are close to losing their jobs and things. And she's able to come in and help, but not only her do it, she'll tell you that she can't do this without firefighters or peers, right? Like whether if you're in police or EMS or flight paramedics or whatever, like you have to have the people that they work with to really make this successful.
Does Dr. Glenn push more of a proactive model for you guys as opposed to the reactive model that, when you first started?
Yes, she does. She really pushes the resiliency training, like in the rookie schools, which we have implemented. I think they get around, I believe it's 10 or 12 hours that we get like broken up through their training. But she really pushes that to kind of give them some tools and skills to help prepare them for when they go through bad stuff. And then also continuing those conversations around at the fire stations and trying to keep those rapports built up. So when something happens, it's not this outsider, it's not super uncomfortable for people to come in and talk about.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to say that Tanya is now one of our ATO counselors, and her reputation, she, like you said, she's been doing it since the mid-90s. I think Oklahoma City bombing was the first time she did EMDR training on one of the firefighters that went into the nursery. So she understands this trauma, and she's a good one to have. And kudos to DFR for getting her involved in your agency.
So Casey, within this last year and a half, more or less, since the Dallas Police Wellness Unit came into existence, we've kind of formed an alliance with you and DFR Peer Support, where when we host trainings, we invite you guys, and vice versa. When you guys have training, like Dr. Tanya Glenn's training, you invited our people to attend. I think that that alliance is very important for all first responders within the city of Dallas. Could you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, it was. That's real important to me. And not only are we trying to blur the lines within our own fire department as far as North Dallas and South Dallas and different associations and different areas of the city that you work and stuff. We want that level of pride for those firefighters to have, but also to know that just even within other cities, right, the job is still the same. The effects on us are similar. And I think that extends to the police department as well. And by you guys even being open to that and willing to have those conversations, they were, it seemed a little more challenging in the beginning. And it was kind of like, what are you guys in this for? Or what, but I feel like over the last year and a half, like you said, we've not became one, right? We're still our separate entities, but I know I call on you guys to either vent or to kind of share stuff too. And as peer coordinators, that's important to have as well. And I know we've had firefighters call you guys, and to me, that's not an offense. It's not a slap in the face. To me, that's somebody else that's getting the appropriate help, because I trust you guys. And and knowing that I don't expect you to share with me any information or anything, because it's not about the information, it's about the people getting help. And I know we've talked before about that extending out to the streets, where, you know, it'd be nice to get back to the days to where maybe police, maybe not so much hanging out at the fire station, we can't call it that because chiefs might listen to this, but coming by to use the restroom or just take a second to cool off in the summertime and get a cup of water or have a bowl of ice cream, but then out on a run. You know, you don't have just the 4 firefighters sitting in the air-conditioned engine and the police officers sitting by themselves in the squad car. We can maybe bridge that gap.
Yeah, I think it's very important. We've had a resilience forum with Dr. Tanya Glenn. I've invited you to suicide prevention classes. And now we have our fight club that's up and running, which is AA for first responders only. And, you know, you can be retired, you can be active duty, doesn't have to be from Dallas. These are programs that I think we've been lacking in, having these things in place to help each other out. And now, you know, we can just keep growing and helping each other out.
I agree.
All right, Casey, we've covered a lot, but I have one final question. What advice would you give to all the first responders out there, whether it's police, fire, EMT, frontline folks, that could help them survive the world of the first responder? And are there mistakes that you made that they can learn from?
All right, so I made a lot of mistakes, but for the sake of time, you know, I've pissed a lot of people off. I've burned a lot of bridges, you know, because of pride or being selfish, unaware, unhealthy, or unhappy, however you want to look at it. But taking care of yourself and checking where your priorities lie, the job's only going to give you back so much. You know, if we aren't taking care of ourselves or our families first, it may seem like happiness is impossible. And so I'd say, like, relationships are key. You know, be nice and be respectful. And I think that kind of encompasses a whole bunch of mistakes. Hopefully people can kind of, you know, read through some of that stuff. But ultimately, just relationships. You never know when you're going to need somebody or need help yourself. This ultimately, I mean, this is the greatest job in the world. The bad things happen. I challenge the first responders listening to ask yourself, what do we do with that? When vigilance becomes almost mechanical in our actions, you know, when responding or attending to emergency situations, what commonly is overlooked is the effects of the aspects of the job. So I just encourage you to have a plan in place for when those quote-unquote bad things happen. And, you know, you don't have to make that plan alone. And I challenge you to reach out earlier than later and include family, faith, friends, and hobbies in your life. I'll leave them with this quote by Rachel Raymond that I really like, is the expectation we can be immersed in suffering and lost and not be touched by it is as unrealistic as expecting to be able to walk through water without getting wet.
Hey brother, hey sister, I'll never give up on you. Hey Mrs., hey mister, I'll see this all the way through. No matter how far the sun and the moon, I'll never give up on you. Down when you're lonely, I'll pull you up. Life leaves you heavy when the going gets tough. I'll be your shoulder, together we'll run. Up from the bottom, yeah, we'll rise above. Hey brother, hey sister, I'll never give up on you. Hey Mrs., hey mister, I'll see this all the way through. No matter how far the sun and the moon, I'll mister, I'll never give up on you. Hey Mrs., hey mister, I'll see this all the way through. No matter how far, for the gold and the blue, I'll never give up.